Music theory is not an exact science. It's just a system that humans invented to help us label and interpret the things that we're hearing. And because it's not a hard, concrete science, things can get kind of slippery and confusing. There can be lots of terminologies that kind of work both ways, and all your definitions are not clear-cut. A big example is diminished chords. I had a huge problem understanding really what diminished chords were because there's so much language involved with what a diminished chord is versus what a diminished triad is, and a diminished seventh, and a half diminished, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to clear all that up today. Today we're learning about diminished chords, how to build them, the differences between them, and how they apply to our guitar. All right? So let's start off. A diminished triad is the first thing that we need to know. And a diminished triad is just 3 notes. That's what a triad means, just 3 notes. And a diminished triad is very easy to build. We'll do it here in the key of A. I'm going to start on A, which is my 5th fret on the low string. And from there, all I have to do is travel 3 frets to find the next note of my diminished triad. That'll be a C. And then I have to travel another 3 frets to help me find the next note of my diminished triad, which will be an E flat. So those 3 notes right there, A, C, and E flat. Those 3 notes compose an A diminished triad. All right. Now, that A diminished triad is just the triad. When somebody says, hey, play me an A diminished chord, they most likely are not talking about just playing those 3 notes. When people talk about diminished chords, they're usually referring to either one of 2 things, either a diminished 7th chord or a half diminished chord. So let's talk about both of those. A diminished 7th chord is also called a full diminished chord, all right? And basically what it is it's another minor third stacked on top of that. So we had 3 frets to our next note, 3 frets to our next note, and if we go 3 frets to our next note, that note would give us a diminished 7th chord, and we also call this a full diminished chord, all right? Now, this is a really interesting chord. Since every note is only 3 frets away, or 3 notes away, there's really no distinct root here, all right? Any one of these notes can be the root. So if I play all those notes at the same time, that A, that C, that E flat, and that F sharp, all right, or a G flat, if I play all those together, I can do it with this shape right here, and that just sounds lovely, right? Now, like I said, any one of those notes can be the root. So right now I'm playing A diminished. I'm also playing C diminished. I'm also playing E flat diminished. I'm also playing G flat diminished. This could be any one of those 4 chords, and it's the exact same shape. That to me is pretty interesting. And depending on what the bass note is, I mean, really the context here is my lowest note is A, so I think the appropriate thing would be to call this an A diminished, even though it could be many other things, all right? Since every note in this chord is 3 frets away from the next note, if I take this whole shape and lift it up 3 frets, all of a sudden, I have the exact same notes, just in a different order. And I can do that again, lifting it up 3 frets here. And you can hear that's the exact same 4 notes. All right? So that is a diminished 7th chord, or a full diminished. Just to show you, there's also another shape I enjoy using. This big shape I showed you, you can break that down into tiny shapes. Like if you just play the 4 middle strings, you'll have this, and that's still a diminished. Or if you look at just the high strings like this, that's a diminished shape too. So that's an easy shape. I like that one because you can break it down into different strings and get different diminished shapes out of it. But the other diminished shape I like to use is this little guy right here. All right. In this case, you can hear I'm doing a different diminished chord, but I like that shape. It's a very convenient little way to play these stacked minor thirds. All right. So the other kind of diminished chord we hear is the half diminished, all right? And this one you often hear referred to as a minor 7 flat 5 chord. So a half diminished, once again, starts with our diminished triad, our 1, our flatted 3, and our flatted 5, all right? But then from there, we're not going to add, we're going to add a flatted 7, all right? All right, that note right there would be a G. And before, what we did is we added a double flatted 7, all right? And that's actually the terminology that they use, which I think is kind of silly, but you get the idea. We took a 7th, we flatted it, and we flatted it again. That's a double flatted 7. That was the note we used in full diminished. Now, we're just using a regular flatted 7. And if you don't know what a flatted 7 is, check out the video on scale degrees. This is really easy concept here. So I've got a 1, a flatted 3, a flatted 5, and a flatted 7. And that chord is a half diminished, all right? Those notes give me A half diminished or A minor 7 flat 5. Yes, I know that is a mouthful of a chord name, but that's what we call it. So to play that, here's what I would do. I would put my middle finger on the root, and I would skip a few strings, and I'd play this shape as well. The other shape I enjoy playing is I can do that same thing here on, let's go E, all right? And I can use this little shape to play a minor 7 flat 5. Now, the minor 7 flat 5, or the half diminished, is the diminished chord that most people are talking about when they say, hey, play me an A diminished. Like if you look through your diatonic chords in the key of A, for example. All right, my first chord is A major, my 4 chord is, D major, my 5 chord is E major, my 6 chord is F sharp minor, but my 7 chord, if you look at that diatonic formula, that 7 chord is always called a diminished chord. And really what you can't do there is you're not allowed to play, in this case G sharp, you're not allowed to play G sharp full diminished as your 7 chord. That is not diatonic. That's not actually in the key. You can see there's some notes in here that are not in the key of A. What is completely in the key of A and what only uses, this half diminished chord really only uses notes from the A major key. So when somebody's talking about the 7 chord in the key of major, they're talking about that 7 chord being diminished. If you really want to play a full diminished chord, let me rephrase that. If you really want to play a complete diminished chord, you're going to have to play the half diminished or the minor 7 flat 5 to stay in the key. All right? The full diminished is cool, but it's not in key anymore, and there's obviously uses for that. It's not like you can't play it. But I remember being very confused with that 7 chord and being thinking, wait a second, what's the deal with the diminished chord? Is it the 3 notes? Is it a full diminished? Is it a half diminished? So hopefully this clears it up. You have a diminished triad, and that is the foundation of all of your diminished chord types, all right? And from there, we really only have 2 types of diminished chords. We have the full diminished, aka the diminished 7th, and that is the ambiguous one with multiple roots and is symmetrical. It's only 3 frets, stacked minor thirds. And we also have its cousin, the half diminished, which is also called the minor 7 flat 5. All right? So using these is a whole different lesson. So maybe we'll do something like that here in the not so distant future. But I just wanted to clear this up because I know for me it was a huge source of confusion when I started. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Leave a comment down below. And if you enjoy this video, please subscribe. I will be doing more videos on theory and guitar lesson as the weeks go by. Thanks.